Catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.
So if you actually have listened to Gaza by Olamide, you'd know that it has nothing to do with the country Gaza or what exactly is happening, what continues to happen between Gaza, that's Palestine, Gaza and Israel, and the conflict that's actually not brewing but has brewed in that part of the world. Well, they say be crazy, be stupid, be silly, be weird, be whatever, because life is just too short to be anything but happy. As far as you're doing these things and you're happy, it's actually worth it. Welcome to Tony's Tech Side. I live stream on www.africatechradio.com. Scratch that. Just type africatechradio.com every weekday from 9 a.m. West African time till midday, wherever you're listening from. Like, comment, and share. We'll learn a tech word. We dig deep into the rubbles of history to find precious jewels of knowledge and share the most important and juiciest tech stories impacting the continent of Africa to keep you informed. You can share your own stories with the rest of us. You can comment, share thoughts on WhatsApp. Yes, you can do that through a voice note or text on 0913-558-1766. 0913-558-1766. If you share your thoughts, I am going to read it to everyone here. Please add +234 if you're texting from outside Nigeria. So, on the 23rd of October 2001, with the slogan 1000 songs in your pocket, Steve Jobs introduced the original iPod, which had a 5 gigabyte hard drive, Firewire connectivity, and synchronization to iTunes. By using a 1.8 drive, the iPod was significantly smaller than competing MP3 players at that particular time, and the Firewire port allowed simultaneous charging and high-speed music synchronization. This was an innovation at that time, and the original iPod only worked with Mac computers like Macintosh. However, the popularity of the iPod among Windows users, who had to hack together a solution to use it with their computers, prompted Apple to release a Windows compatible version in the second generation of iPods. And with the introduction of the iTunes Music Store in June 2003, that success of the iPod completely changed the landscape of music and computer history. And on October 24th, 1861, looking at history, Western Union completed the first transcontinental telegraph line across the United States, making nearly instant cross-country communication possible for the first time. Previously, it actually took you 10 days for a letter to be sent from Missouri to California in the US via the Pony Express, and it's not really coincidental that 2 days after this, the Pony Express kind of shut down operations. They say innovation is disruptive. Everyone down the line has actually experienced it. What's our tech word for today? It's BYOD. No, not BOD like board on Twitter. No, it's bring your own device. BYOD. I talked about given the month of October being a month we're going to have every one tech term or one word of the day or our word of the day being in cybersecurity. So this is actually a policy. The bring your own device is a policy that an organization sets for its staff to say, bring in your own IT devices from your home and use them. Don't just bring them in, but use them on the corporate network. Use them to work. Now, some companies ban it outrightly. They say, no, don't. If you're caught using your own devices on the corporate network or on to work, then there's going to be a problem. We're going to have a problem. But then other companies allow it, and then they have conditions and they have restrictions, and then others just prefer you to just use your own laptops and tablets, do whatever you like, right? And there may be financial benefits, but there will also be risks and governance overheads that must be addressed when you're considering allowing everyone to bring their own device or devices, because these devices are not company property. It's difficult to mandate the staff to say, oh, you must use these devices in this particular way. For example, if you have to define the kind of websites that a staff has to visit and not to visit, you can't be visiting pornographic websites with an office device, an office laptop, computer, phone. No, you can't, right? And then there's some where some certain social media sites are actually banned. But then if you have a BYOD, like a bring your own device policy, like if they want in their own free time to actually go to these websites, like how do you know? Like how do you set those standards, those acceptable use policies? So allowing bring your own device means life will become more complicated for your IT staff, but it doesn't mean it's totally impossible for your IT staff to handle. They'll just try to support like a mishmash and all sorts of devices compared to managing a standard hardware estate where everything comes from one manufacturer and everything can be tweaked from the beginning before you give them the devices. And there are lots of points to reconcile before you give the go ahead for a bring your own device. So you can force your staff to use a particular brand of endpoint protection software. If a member of staff leaves their personal smartphone on a train and it contains private company data, you have the right to remotely wipe it, and whatnot. So what acceptable use policies would you be deciding? To better understand all of these things I'm saying, you can listen to our podcast episode. I just had it literally a few days ago from when I'm live streaming now. And it's on governance, risk, and compliance, the business as usual approach. Yep, and it's something that Ethnos, a set of episodes that Ethnos sponsored to ensure that companies are on the right side. They understand what risks are there, what benefits are there, and they can actually say, yes, this is how we can protect ourselves, and this is how we can prepare or plan for when things go awry or when things go south. So, and this is not just in you buying softwares, to ensure that these things are done. It's actually, as I've said here, making it a business as usual approach, like an everyday thing, a culture thing. So you don't go spending a lot of money. It's good to spend money, but come on, man, it's good to also plan effectively. What many would consider one of the most iconic goal celebration. In fact, I think a couple of people from Nigeria most likely consider one of the most iconic goal celebrations of all time in footballing history in Nigeria, and Nigeria is really a big footballing country, would be Rashidi Yekini going to the goal post and holding the net and yes. So Google honored late Nigerian footballer Rashidi Yekini with a doodle on the 23rd of October, and this would have been his 60th birthday. I would call the 23rd of October 2023 a day of multiple wins and maybe just one or two side events. So because Yekini is really one of the people that people looked up to, because he came out of poverty and homelessness to make a mark for Nigeria and himself as one of Nigeria's greatest football stars to have ever walked. And Google recreated Yekini's celebration during the 1994 World Cup. Oh, too iconic. I'm just picturing it in my head. I watched that celebration multiple times. It's the point where after scoring against Bulgaria, Yekini ran into the net, clutched it with both hands, and it was he was going to cry, and at the same time pull out that net. He scored Nigeria's first ever World Cup finals goal. That's quarterfinals, semifinals, and whatnot. Nigeria went on to beat Bulgaria 3-0, and later went into the round of 16 where they were knocked out by Italy. And Yekini is still Nigeria, that Super Eagles all-time leading scorer with 37 goals, and he was prolific not just in Nigeria but also the clubs he played in, from Shooting Stars of Nigeria to Africa Sport of Ivory Coast and Victoria Setúbal of Portugal, amongst others. So he actually also helped Shooting Stars reach the final of the Africa Champions Cup, which is the Africa Champions League now, and that happened in 1984. And that was the same year he also made, his debut for Nigeria. He was named African Footballer of the Year in 1993, just before he went on in 1994 during the World Cup to score that goal and have that party. His nickname is Goal's Father, because come on, he can repeatedly outwit goalkeepers and score. He actually died in 2012, and he would have been 60 if he was still alive. Well, something else that is big news in Nigeria is the Nigerian government winning a case in a British court that overturned an $11 billion arbitration award made to a firm following a dispute over a failed gas deal. Now, this award was first made in 2017, and then due to interest, it increased, in 2019, and it was a huge chunk of Nigeria's foreign reserves. And as part of a protracted legal battle between Virgin Islands-based firm Process and Industrial Developments Limited, which a lot of people know as P&ID, and the Nigerian government. Now, Nigeria argued that P&ID had paid bribes to obtain the contract and corrupted lawyers to obtain confidential documents. And P&ID denied that and then blamed the failure of the gas deal on institutional incompetence. But on Monday, the judge found that P&ID had paid bribes to a Nigerian oil ministry official in connection with the 2010 gas contract and had failed to disclose this when he took Nigeria to court after the deal actually failed. Now, on a sad note, I don't know if this is supposed to be a sad note or mixed tone, because the website of IrokoTV is actually offline, and the mobile app has also been removed from Apple and Android app stores. The entertainment company IrokoTV, according to some quarters, are closing down or shutting down. However, the CEO Jason Njoku has said that there's an ongoing migration, and that's the reason why the company's services are unavailable. I'm unavailable. They know they see. So the idea is to change focus after 10 years of operating on a software stack created for an African audience with particular broadband configuration needs. This is according to Jason Njoku. I remember that in August 2020, IrokoTV disclosed that it would stop expanding into Africa and laid off 150 employees. Now, they had first placed 28% of their employees on unpaid leave in May 2020, and this added to the challenges that the 9-year company actually faced. In 2011, they actually aimed to change the face of African entertainment by making Nollywood movies. At that point in time, they were known as the African Netflix. They drew funding from both domestic and foreign investors, successfully raised $42 million in capital. But then, issues, started. I know, aside the layoff of, over 100 employees, looking at the COVID-19 fallout, I know that devaluation, also affected, the company. And aside the fact that they were also looking at moving a little bit away from the African markets and only pushing African content as Nollywood content to an international audience alone. Less than 1% of funding in 2023 has gone to the entertainment sector. So it's not like there's a lot of money coming in. And other companies too, in terms of others who are expanding into the continent, Netflix, Sony just announced $100 million funding that's targeting African entertainment startups. There's a lot of competition for IrokoTV on the continent of Africa, and I don't think that they're built to actually face up this competition with a large, like money or stack of funds. If this happens, if your closure is really true, it'll be a big loss, not just for investors, but also for the Nollywood industry and the African startup ecosystem as a whole. Also talking about the entertainment and tech space, because it's been really difficult cracking it, right? The same way Netflix and Sony isn't difficult for everybody, but it's much more difficult because these are our own platform. Maybe what we need to do is start pushing on selling our own content outside the continent, right? And just allow those who are here to consume the content from other continents, right? But then you find out that Netflix and the likes of them are investing in movies here on the continent. Although you may look at the picture quality and say they're investing a lot more in picture quality and making it better, but they're actually investing in the entertainment sector big time. And I just hope that this news is actually wrong and false, and it's actually the migration that is happening. Notwithstanding, we would remain on top of the news and then bring out what exactly we think is happening with Jason Njoku and IrokoTV. Well, with South Africa's current issue with electricity and what Eskom has been complaining for a long time now, South Africa's electricity minister has said that the department is pushing for rooftop solar incentive in the country to be extended and expanded to include equipment like inverters and batteries as part of the package. Now, this is a good move, like a very, very good move, because not everyone will most likely be able to like just that rooftop solar incentive shouldn't just stop at just the rooftop stuff, but equipment that would also help to remove the weight or the burden that Eskom currently carries, which is just everyone waiting for electricity to come from Eskom, but finding ways to create your own electricity that would not finally at the end of the day like rely on Eskom, right, and the electricity that Eskom provides. This is one of the key factors that's also giving the grid a boost, and a significant drop in demand, because if the incentive for rooftop solar is extended and expanded to include things like inverters and batteries and other equipment that help in generation of power, it would really you would find that there would be a significant drop in demand that goes into or that Eskom actually gets. And if you don't know, Eskom is like the electricity board or body for South Africa. The minister also said that there's like a rapid adoption of rooftop solar among residents in South Africa, and this has contributed in a big way. Installed rooftop solar now is estimated at about 4,500 megawatts, almost doubling from June 2022 to September, October 2023, just within a year. And this goes to prove what exactly the place that government and policies have to play, the role they have to play in making things work. Because if all the while this incentive wasn't pushed for, we will still be struggling with the same thing in South Africa, the same problem, Eskom not being able to meet up with the demand because of a lot of issues, from the fact that most of the power generating machines and whatnot have issues because they have not been, the monies that are supposed to have used for maintenance have been squandered, and maintenance has been really poor over the years, not just this year, not just last year, not just 2 years ago, but this is something that's spanned over a decade. And if we're advocating for more rooftop solar in South Africa, not just rooftop solar incentives for rooftop solar, but also incentives that would also include the equipment that would be used or that people use to get power or electricity for themselves, it's really going to be good. So what kind of incentives are we talking about? There should be tax breaks on things like inverters, batteries. So if you used to import inverters for a particular amount, the tax break means that they're removing a certain percentage of taxes on importation and whatnot so that you can import more. And if you're actually into producing these things, batteries, inverters, and things that have to do with rooftop solar panels and whatever equipment are used in generating power electricity, the taxes that the government will collect from those people producing locally would either be removed or reduced to a particular amount that makes sure that these things are cheap or cheaper or more affordable than they used to be, so that everyone can afford it and everyone can actually stop the over dependence and reliance, total dependence and reliance on Eskom, which is the electricity board, and start having other sources of electricity. So when we have to like ration electricity to different areas, you will not really feel it, because at that point in time when you do not have electricity, you can fall back on your solar panels. Really important. And something else that's also very important to note as this move is being made is, as we're pushing for this in terms of a new financing instrument needs to actually be introduced to allow poorer households to take advantage of this boom, because it feels like it needs to get to a particular amount so that the poorer households can break even too. We might say, it's about 2,000 rands to do this, and then it gets reduced to 1,000 rands. How about people who can only afford it for 500? So how exactly are we going to finance this now? And for people who are into fintech, this might just be a way for you to do something good. So look at renewable energy, right? Renewable energy sources. and how to finance people, poorer households getting these things. I don't know, it might be maybe a loan, or a payment, scheduled payments, and whatnot. And this would most likely move South Africa quicker and faster to ensuring that they meet up with their carbon emission rates that we're all trying our best to meet up with. Then it's also important to note that the batteries and inverters we're talking about here are not the ones that rely on the power from Eskom, right? The ones that you have to charge with the electricity that's come from Eskom. But this is one that, it can be recharged maybe by the sun, maybe solar, or wind, or something else that's just on its own from the environment, from nature, can actually get this thing done by itself. And we don't have to start relying again on charging those inverters and batteries that we need to also charge with Eskom generated electricity. Now, Egypt is, according to local press reports that I found, the National Telecommunications Regulatory Authority in the country, they're in discussions to issue 5G licenses. So 5G licenses coming to Egypt, and they're supposed to be available as early as December 2023, with the fees placed at a minimum of $500 million. And although these are not confirmed by NITRA or NTRA, that's the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority in Egypt. I remember that the winners for the bid for the 5G spectrum, 3.5 gigahertz 5G spectrum in Nigeria, which were MTN and Mafab, they paid about $273 million then in 2022 to the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, which is just like the Egyptian Telecommunications Regulatory Authority. Now, in order to incentivize people to participate in this bid, the license fees may be paid in foreign currency. This also helps Egypt solve its problem, potentially, right, of foreign exchange, because they also have an issue with foreign exchange. So it's also a source of foreign exchange. So they bring in foreign exchange into the country, and then they can use it for whatever they need. And the four major players that everyone is looking onto to get on this bid is Orange, Vodafone, Etisalat, and Telecom Egypt. We all expect these four at least to bid and join this bid. According to Ashrak Business News Service, operators in Egypt have also recently asked, a permission to increase the service prices by up to 30%, because their profit margins have kind of declined, and there's also rising inflation, FX issues, the Hamas and Israeli conflict that's happening, oil prices and whatnot. And there's also the suggestion that the authority and operators, should have meetings about the licenses, license offering dates, and what is all around it, so that it can all be sorted out in 2024. And the 5G service, can actually get into Egypt in 2024. And it appears to be the first indication that Egypt is finally pushing on with the 5G licensing. This particular news we're hearing kipu, small news. Although there are no bidding or qualification systems that have been mentioned or talked about, and the 2-month window seems like a very short time, for this thing to happen. But who says that it can be shifted? Who says that it cannot be moved to a January or February, or just give people more time to actually get their acts together before we move on with this. Botswana's president on Monday, 23rd of October, appointed Cornelius Dekop as new central bank governor. So Botswana has a new central bank governor with immediate effect. He actually replaces Moses Palaelo, who served as governor of the Bank of Botswana since 2016, and that's about 7 years now. Now, that's not the only thing, that's there because according to the statement by the communications department, there was no reason for the departure of the Moses Palaelo, and this is coming 3 days before an interest rate decision. Maybe there may just be adjustments, to how the country wants to move forward. But notwithstanding, if we move swiftly to Burkina Faso, it's where a new bill that would limit SIM card ownership in the country is one of the things everyone is talking about. So there's a new bill which was announced last week that allows users to hold not more than 2 SIM cards from one mobile provider at a time. And also, the bill also provides for the sale of SIM cards to be done only at approved agencies and points of sale. According to the Minister of Digital Transition, Post and Electronic Communications, Aminata Zero-Sapane, she said that this is like a measure that they're using to try to reduce the improper use of electronic communication services. And we've heard that people use multiple SIM cards so that they can like build SIM farms, and they can connect these multiple SIM cards to computer servers and then use them to send large amounts of SMS spams to people. So making this move, in a month dedicated to cybersecurity, I think it's good, although I think it needs to be like really looked at so that in the long run, it will surely limit like the bulk sales of SIM cards, and what we think is progress in terms of sales being done by these telcos. It would also affect subscription numbers too, of course, clearly, but we'll just see it as something that never was, right? Because if one person has like 5 to 6 SIM cards, especially for those who do these things, right, and then you now trim it down, they would find other ways, right? Your numbers may not look very great, but you know that you have your original numbers, not made up numbers. In 2021, however, Togo set a cap also on the number of active SIM cards, that can be used per operator. And a number of other African countries have, done the same thing. I know Nigeria has gone down a registration route for SIM card. It was big in 2022. They made a lot of noise about it 2021 through 2022. Ghana did theirs 2022 through 2023. And whether caps on SIM ownership are more effective at limiting criminal ownership of SIMs, a bit unclear, but it's actually a cheaper and less disruptive method than registration has so far proved to be in many countries. So I think like it's a better way of going around it, and they've said that they've tried other ways to work around it and it really hasn't seemed to be very effective, right? And let's try this one. If it works out, good. If it doesn't work out, then we know it really didn't work out, and then we can move on. If you're in Nigeria, you should hear this. The Nigerian government plans to train 3 million technical talent by 2027, and this was launched under the 3MTT program. And Nigeria wants to position itself as a pipeline for technical talent across the world, not just in Nigeria or on the continent, but like in the world. And it's one of the things that the new Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, wants to actually do. And it's a key part, it's a critical part of what he actually plans to do. Well, Premly, by the way, I have to just mention them. Premly is the local startup that is powering the platform. So what the platform does is you come in, you register first, and I think the last time I checked, I think over 200 or just about 200,000 people, or 100,000, over 100,000 people have actually registered on that platform. So the platform checks you out, verifies your identity, and then says, oh yes, this person is qualified to move on to the next stage. And that particular process is being powered by Premly. And I must say, my guys, like I know them, so I think it's a good one. There is, an opportunity to be part of a young group of organizations and individuals if you want to sign up to be a teacher, right? Or someone who will be teaching the people that would actually go through this process. And over the next 3 months, this is like the prototype phase. And we really hope at this point where applications are being submitted, and whatnot, we can go through this process, nicely and get onto the process where we're actually training the people, and then we have the final process, which is the technical talents coming out. By the way, you're asking how they're going to achieve this. There is a partnership that has been signed with IHS Stores, I think to the tune of 1 billion naira, and IHS Stores has also agreed that they're going to pay the managers across the different places that would be like the centers where these things would happen physically. So I think it's a good plan. I think it's a good partnership. And I hope that everyone within that pipeline doesn't blow anything up so that everything can actually go fine and Nigeria will be better for it afterwards. Finally, as I wrap up on the most impactful stories on the continent, the government of Rwanda says it is sending humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza. And this was through a written statement sent to the BBC Great Lakes. And it was from the government's deputy spokesperson, who is Alan Mukuralinda, and the donation was sent to the Jordan Hashemite Charity Organization, the JHCO, and it arrived in the Jordanian capital, Amman, and it's in support to the ongoing international rescue effort that's actually happening in that particular part. And Rwanda is one of the countries on the continent that has close ties with Israel. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Benoni Netanyahu visited Rwanda in 2016. And what exactly did Rwanda give? 16 tons of food items, medicine, medical supplies. And Rwanda also reiterated that they need, like the whole world needs, a de-escalation to protect the lives of the innocent civilians within that particular period. Note that Rwanda has also had its own, Rwanda itself has its own story. Over 800,000 people, mostly the ethnic Tutsis, were massacred in 1994. And 6 million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust during the Second World War. So they have a theme in common with things like this, conflicts like this. And although all of that, what happened in 1994 in Rwanda with the ethnic Tutsis has been settled, but it's also good to lend a helping hand. It's also good to remember. And as we pray, as we hope, and we advise, that those who are at the central aisle, those who are at the middle or in the middle of this conflict between Israel and Hamas, find a way to get it resolved to avoid more people actually dying.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.